So when it comes to speakers in general, I've obviously reviewed a ton of speakers. I've worked on a load of speakers, loads of different types of speakers in my time. So I feel I'm in a good place to be able to give my 2p worth. I will say I haven't actually heard every single set of speakers. That would be mental. But I've heard all the kind of main ones that most people are looking at. There's a lot of weird sort of eccentric-y ones out there that I still want to listen to and still want to get in, but you know, time and getting on with actually doing some work would be good. But these are my top 5 speakers that I've worked on, but there's no order here because really speakers, when you get them, it's more about the room and how they fit into that room and the size of the speaker compared to how much the throw of that speaker is. Because if I had massive speakers in here, which I have had, it's just so overwhelming and the room gets too involved, and that's the problem when you've got a smaller room with massive speakers or small speakers in a massive room, they get lost. So these are my top 5. Okay, number 1 is a speaker that I worked on for quite a while. It's the B&W 802. Now these are the speakers that are at Abbey Road. Abbey Road has a deal with B&W, I think, to be their kind of speaker sponsor. But these are great speakers. The B&Ws, they're hi-fi speaker essentially. They were used at Sterling Sound for a long time and at Abbey Road, as I just said. And I had a set for about 5 years. Really nice to work on. Super tight bass. Really lovely, smooth, high end. Just the definition throughout the speakers really good. They are passive speakers, so you have to have amplifiers with them, but they're a lovely speaker just in a mid-sized room. I did have them in a small room and they were a little bit too powerful. You couldn't crank them. When you crank them, the bass is really nice. It's really powerful. It's really tight and it goes super low. So they're a lovely speaker, but you need a nice size room to be able to fit them in. So my number 2 speaker is the ATC 150s. Now these are a big old boys. They're fairly big. They're bigger than the B&Ws. Not in kind of length, but in width and depth, they're big speakers. ATC speakers in general have got this mid-range speaker, which is the best I've heard, I think. I can safely say that. The mid-range on ATCs is killer. It's so nice. I've still got it in my head. I can still hear it, how nice it was. And I was really wanting to get some, and I was really tempted to get some. But with the ATCs, I just didn't have the low end that I wanted. And they were too big for in here, really. I mean, they were massive. And there is a video of me doing it, and I worked on them. They're really good. Like I say, the top end and the tweeters was just a joy, an absolute joy. So gorgeous and open and wide and involving. It was lovely, but I just felt like I had to feel the bass speaker to see if it was on. So I've noticed that a lot of top studios are now using the ATCs, the big ATCs. And I'm also noticing that a lot of them are using a sub speaker with it. So that's Sterling Sound. Any studio that's built by Northwood Acoustics, who are kind of like the in vogue studio builders, they build beautiful rooms and they obviously know what they're doing. They hang the speakers with springs and stuff. It's an amazing setup they use. I'd love to hear Sterling Room. I'll have to go over there and have a listen. But these speakers are amazing speakers. I just found that they didn't have enough bass, so I would want to add more bass bit cabinets to them. So in here it would just be ridiculous. They look like an old sort of 1970s dub system. I kind of like it. It's kind of retro-y 70s. It's a good look. It's not very modern, but the sound was okay. The bass wasn't amazing for me. The mids and the tops were sublime, should I say. But I think if you've got more subs and low subs on there, then it'll balance the mids out and you'll get a good sound. And if the room's brilliant, then they would work great. So number 3 is the PMC BB5s. Now these are a massive speaker. They're also massive money. I think they're overpriced for what they are because they just are. They're massive, lovely speakers, but they're like about 120,000 or something crazy. Now, I had these at Soundmasters. I worked on them there for about 10 years. I also worked on some at a place called Fluid Mastering, which was good. And also at Metropolis Mastering, I worked on them as well. John had them in his room and Stuart had them in his. They were great in John's room, great in Stuart's room, because basically PMC speakers were built around Metropolis. So as Metropolis was growing, PMC grew too, and that's why they are the speaker at Metropolis a lot of the time. And the BB5s, when we had them soffit mounted, which means they're in the walls at Soundmasters, which can work having soffit mounted speakers because it takes away, you know, the rebound frequencies from around the back, but they didn't work there for me really. I've always found BB5s sound better when they're freestanding and they have that sort of room around them just for the way it bounces off. But they are very, very room dependent, BB5s. You have to have them in the right room. So if you're thinking of getting some BB5s, I would be looking at your room design and building the speakers, the room around the speakers. I'd probably say that about most speakers, but if you've got the budget and stuff, if you're in that kind of world of spending 100,000 on a set of speakers, then you're in the world of building a room for them. So yeah, I would say BB5s, amazing sounding speakers. The low end is super fast on BB5s, really good tight bass. The tops can get a little bit bright and a bit harsh. That is the case I've found with most PMC speakers. They're not as silky smooth, they're quite brittle, but if you've got them in the right room and if they're set up correctly, they can be super revealing and really nice. And the low end again is just, the bass is great on PMCs. It's directional, tight, it's a really good sound, but again, as I keep saying, you have to have them in the right room. I had a set in the room that I was at Metropolis and they weren't BB5s, they were the smaller ones, and they just didn't sound that great at all. So really, it's very room dependent with those speakers. So next is number 4, which is the focal Sopras. Now, I had them in here. I had a white pair. I think you will remember that if you've seen my videos going back. Amazing speaker. It's basically Focal's answer to the B&W 802. They're a very sort of similar setup to low frequency cones, mid-range and a treble. They have the focal sound obviously because they have the tweeter, which is the Brillium tweeter, and they've got a really nice mid-range. They're lovely speakers. Again, I would say they're very similar to the 802 in the way that they're hi-fi speakers. They have really, really tight low end. The top end is really bright. Some people don't like the focal sound. I actually really like the tweeters on focal speakers. I find them really nice and bright, but not bright in a harsh way, but bright and really open. They go really high. I've noticed that some people that mix on focal speakers can actually put too much top end on, and when it translates a little bit too bright. But as long as you're aware of that and you're working with the speaker and you get used to your room with the reference material you listen to, then you can really get a good sound that translates amazing with the focals. I loved them in here. They were great, really good sound, really tight, really involving. My only problem with them in here is that the room was getting a little bit too involved. I noticed that mainly when I put the Gaia feet on them, and then the room didn't get involved, and then the speakers actually did sound better. So they were a little bit too overpowering really. They go quite loud, but there's a lot of frequencies going on. So again, very room dependent. I would say all speakers are room dependent. So that leads me on to number 5, which are the speakers I currently have, which are the Key Audio 3s. These are mind-blowing because they don't get the room involved as much because of the way that they push the bass out the sides and the back, and then that comes back to cancel out, so you then get a directional bass sound. So you actually want to take away any material you have around the sides and the back so that they can rebound off the wall and then cancel out, so you get an even tighter bass sound. They go solo because of those 4 bass speakers that are 2 at the back and 2 at the sides. They go really low, so they are a main monitor. They are really crystal clear in the top end. That works really well because of this cardioid effect. and the mid-range is really nice. So although they look small, they're actually louder than the focals that I had in here, and they're probably louder than the ATCs that I had. It's mental. It does your head in when you come in and go, oh my God, where's all that bass coming from? There's no bass speaker. But you need to listen to them to sort of believe it. So I'm working on them at the moment. They're really good. I'm getting great translation. Everybody that comes in here and listens to them loves them. And as I say, the main thing for me is that I can hear exactly what I'm doing. The mid-range reminds me very much of an NS10 vibe, where it's a kind of intense mid-range, so I can really detail out what I'm doing in the mids, but also have that extra octave in the low end so that I can really hear the low subby stuff and really feel it, but it doesn't overpower the room, and it doesn't start moving all around the room as much as a massive speaker that doesn't have the same control features. So for me, they're working great in this room. This is a good size room for them. So and my room is, so that you know, it's 6.5 meters by 4 meters. So that's the kind of room size these fit really well in. I think you could go louder with them if you get the bottoms, which is why I've got them, because I might add the bottoms, but I think they'll go even louder. And they go so loud at the moment, I don't really want the bottoms at the moment, because I'm just not going to be able to hear anything because they'll be so loud, because I'll just keep cranking and cranking and cranking. So it's better I've got a stop point. Which is still mentally loud. Yeah, loving these at the moment. That's my top 5 speakers. If you're looking for high-end mastering speakers, check out all 5 of those. There are other ones on the market, obviously. They're the 5 that I've listened to. They're the 5 that are at all the main mastering studios in the world. So they're definitely worth looking at and listening to and working out what works best for your room. Every speaker works differently in every room. It's get the basics of the room right, and then get the speakers involved, or vice versa, get the speakers and then build the room. But really consider the fact the room is the most essential thing, and then getting the speakers to fit into that room. You might spend a fortune on some amazing speakers because they sound great. Get them in the wrong room and they're just going to sound rubbish. And it doesn't matter if you spent 100,000 or 5,000. It's really down to getting them set up in the right room in the right way. So my top tip would be to do that, is just to make sure the speakers fit the room. So I hope that's helped you in some way if you're looking for mastering speakers. If you've got any questions, then please hit me up below in the comments or email me streaky@streaky.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on speakers. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.